Like all serious criminals, serial killers prefer not to be caught, yet capture, while not exactly inevitable, is highly likely. Once arrested, the vast majority of repeat murderers spill the beans in prison.
I had these obsessive desires and thoughts wanting to control them.
It could be part of a plan for an easier life behind bars, or for others, it may be a more ego-driven choice.
And that's why you killed them.
Right. Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
From the first woman serial killer to the devil himself. Today, we are looking at some of the most horrific confessions by serial killers that will shock you. Eileen Wuornos. In 1991, a 35-year-old illegal worker from Michigan shattered a long-held myth about serial murder when she confessed to killing 7 men in Florida over the course of a year. For decades, the gruesome crimes of such repeat killers as Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, and David Berkowitz seemed to establish a basic profile of the serial killer as white, often motivated by sexual dysfunction, and exclusively male. Eileen Carol Wuornos proved that serial murder is an equal opportunity terror. Labeled America's first female serial killer by the press, Wuornos was unique in the annals of crime. Famed FBI profiler Robert K. Kessler described Wuornos as an anomaly in his extensive research. One aspect of Wuornos' life was all too typical among her male counterparts. She witnessed and experienced unimaginable abuse and violence in childhood. Ultimately, she slipped through every societal safety net and turned to crime out of desperation and to murder out of sheer anger. On January 9, 1991, Eileen Wuornos was arrested at a Port Orange biker bar called The Last Resort. After murdering and running away from the police every time, Wuornos first confessed to her lover, Tyria Moore. Investigators had convinced Tyria Moore to help them get a confession from Wuornos. After 11 tense and tearful conversations over 3 days, Moore was able to convince Wuornos to confess to the killings. On January 16, 1991, Eileen Wuornos, true to her word to Tyria Moore, met with Sergeant Bruce Munster and arresting officer Larry Horzipa in an interrogation room. She bluntly confessed to her killings.
And I got to come clean that I killed those 7 men in first-degree murder and robbery. As they said, they had it right, a serial killer.
While concluding her most famous interview about her confession, she said,
Nick, this is the last time I'm going to say it. You have to kill Eileen Wuornos because she'll kill again.
During her final days on death row, Wuornos professed her hate for men, the police, and the legal system, while alternately maintaining and denying that she killed in self-defense. In her final interview, she stated that the police had allowed her to kill to turn her into a serial killer. Still, she said she welcomed death as a conclusion to a torturous life. Ted Bundy. You'd be hard-pressed to find a person over the age of 15 who hasn't heard the name Ted Bundy. He is one of the most infamous serial killers in the history of the United States. When Ted was 14 years old, he encountered his first adult magazine, discarded in the alleyway by his home. Intrigued and excited, Ted quickly dived into the world of pornography, rough sex in particular. Ann Burr, an 8-year-old in his hometown of Burlington, Vermont, disappeared not far from a construction site where Bundy was sighted. Thus began his descent into the dark world of kidnapping and murder. He was first put on trial on August 16, 1975. He proposed marriage to Carol Ann Boone inside one of the many courtrooms he would visit. Bundy was convicted initially on 2 counts of murder in Florida and given 2 death sentences for his crimes. In 1980, he was charged with and convicted of 1 additional murder, resulting in 1 more death sentence. Bundy maintained his innocence throughout questioning and all phases of his numerous trials. Bundy also appealed his cases all the way to the United States Supreme Court, only to be rejected every time. As his execution date began to loom ever so close, Bundy summoned officials through his post-conviction attorney, Polly Nelson. In what Nelson described as a way to buy himself some time, Bundy began to confess his crimes. Ted Bundy believed that if he confessed his crimes, the courts would postpone his execution. By confessing, Bundy figured that the Florida governor would allow Bundy to live so that he could be used as a tool to locate the bodies of some of his missing victims. But Bundy was wrong. His appeals were all used up, and the governor's office ignored Bundy's request for a stay of execution. He was put to death on January 24, 1989. In the days prior to his death, Bundy confessed to the chilling murders of 36 women. The murders took place across multiple states, and most of the victims fit eerily similar descriptions. Most were young women, one as young as 12, who had long, dark hair that was parted down the middle. Bundy once famously said, "You feel their last bit of breath leaving their body. You're looking into their eyes. A person in that situation is God." He also confessed that pornography was his biggest influencer from the start. In his last ever interview from jail, Bundy said this:
We're talking about an influence that is the influence of violent types of media and violent, which was an indispensable link in the chain of behavior, the chain of events that led to the behaviors, to the assaults, to the murders, and what have you.
Investigators believe that Bundy could have been responsible for the deaths of up to 100 women. But with the man the media dubbed the co-ed killer now dead for over 30 years, it's highly unlikely that the world will ever know exactly how many women Bundy took from this life. Jeffrey Dahmer. Dahmer was born in 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is where he also went on to commit most of his crimes. Reports have claimed that Dahmer was interested in dead animals from a young age, and even started collecting the skeletons of small animals and roadkill. He's also said to have been an outsider at high school. Dahmer was responsible for the murder of 17 men and boys between 1978 and 1991. His sickening murders involved dismemberment, necrophilia, and cannibalism, with Dahmer later becoming known as the Milwaukee Cannibal. He was also found to have preserved body parts in his home. Prior to the murders, Dahmer had been arrested on various occasions, including for groping a young boy. He committed his first murder just 3 weeks after graduating high school in 1978. He killed his second victim in late 80s after a stint in the Army, continuing for years up until his arrest in 1991. Dahmer's victims were predominantly Black, Asian, and Latino men, ranging in age from 14 to 33. He would meet victims in various places, including at gay bars and in malls. Dahmer was ultimately caught when one of his victims, Tracy Edwards, escaped and was found running down the street with a pair of handcuffs dangling from his wrist. He told police that Dahmer was trying to kill him, with authorities going on to find body parts preserved in his apartment. Confessing to his killings, Dahmer famously said in court,
"This was a case to tell the world that I did what I did not for reasons of hate. I hated no one. I knew I was sick or evil or both. Now I believe I was sick. The doctors have told me about my sickness, and now I have some peace."
In 1994, just 2 years into his sentence, Dahmer was attacked and killed by fellow prison inmate Christopher Scarver, who hit him over the head with a metal bar. H Holmes. Herman Webster Mudgett was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed beauty who also just happened to be one of the most dangerous men who ever lived. In his day, he may have convinced men and women alike that he was merely a good-hearted practicing physician, but the truth is, behind the closed doors of his infamous murder castle, he was secretly racking up a body count, and would soon be known for the heathen that he was, notorious serial killer H Holmes. In 1886, Herman Webster Mudgett moved to Englewood, Chicago, and changed his name to Dr. H Holmes, before quickly attaining a job at Holton Drugs on the corner of Wallace and 63rd. Eventually, Holmes acquired the entire store, as the previous owners suddenly went away. In 1888, Holmes secured the rights to the vacant lot property across the street and began building his Castle of Horrors. During construction, Holmes experienced a high turnover rate of workers. Holmes fired his men quickly and often for two main reasons. Number 1, Holmes found that he could skip out on paying men by labeling their work as incompetent. And number 2, only he truly knew the entire blueprint of his wildly complicated hotel of death. Hidden in the walls was a greased chute that Holmes used to quickly dispose of bodies by sending them straight down into the basement below. The basement itself was possibly the most petrifying part of the whole place. Like a medieval torture dungeon, it contained quicklime pits, vats of acid, a crematorium, and an elasticity determinator, aka a torture device that stretched out people's bodies by elongating their limbs until their bones turned to brittle. Each time a person vanished from his hotel, a hospital nearby would suddenly acquire a fresh new cadaver in the weeks that followed. Back then, doctors paid top dollar for a fresh corpse. In desperate need of their bodies for their students for educational purposes, it wasn't entirely uncommon for them to resort to robbing graveyards for their material, but it was much easier for them to pay someone for a body and simply not ask where it came from. Holmes took full advantage of this demand and made a killing by offering up the supply, literally. When he was finally arrested and found guilty, Holmes confessed to killing 27 people. 9 can be confirmed for sure, but the rest are speculation. In a reported interview, Holmes said, "I was born with the devil in me. I could not help the fact that I was a murderer no more than the poet can help the inspiration to sing." He was hanged for the murder of Benjamin Pitzel on May 7, 1896. Unfortunately, he was not found guilty of any other murders, as the judge would only allow evidence to be brought forth that directly related to Pitzel's death. Which one of these confessions did you find the most terrifying? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and also subscribe to our channel for your regular dose of whodunits. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Until then, be safe and don't get any crazy ideas.